Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecini. We are presented by The Athletic. Today on the show, it's the second part of our two-part episode this week with Adam Spinella, Coach Spins. What's going on, man?
Hey, Sam. It's good to see you again. It's been a long 20 minutes since we just ended the recording of the last podcast, but basketball never stops and neither do we. So let's get right into it tonight, huh?
Yeah, as mentioned previously, this is being recorded on Sunday. I can feel myself getting sick. I have a sore throat. I'm not feeling super hot right now. And I have some real concerns about being able to record later this week. So we're recording a double episode tonight on Sunday. And the second part of this episode is a NBA draft bold predictions episode. NBA draft season is going to kick into gear in full swing next week, starting with the start of the college basketball season. And I couldn't be more excited. I know Spins is pumped for it. And I'm just ready to go. And hopefully I'll be healthy by then. And we'll have a little bit more energy and excitement because I'm probably starting to fade a little bit, unfortunately, on this one. But we did want to start with the news about Baba Miller that came out on Saturday, I believe. Right, Adam?
I think it was Friday night here, but yeah, right coming into the weekend, that afternoon, late Friday afternoon news dump that nobody seems to want to pay attention to, but everybody has to deal with right away. And then Monday morning comes and you forget about it.
Yeah. So Baba Miller is a 6'11", 6'10", something like that, forward for the Florida State Seminoles. Has guard skills, really great transition player, late growth spurt guy. So has real guard skills in terms of being able to handle and being able to do some really interesting things with the ball. He's a guy that NBA scouts are really excited to see at Florida State. Had a pretty good opener in their exhibition game. I think he had 11 points in their first exhibition game this season. He has been suspended by the NCAA for the first 16 games of this season. It is an egregiously ridiculous decision to me, but let's just kind of dive into the details here. So Baba Miller had to appeal to the NCAA. The appeal was denied. And what happened was, prior to his recruitment to Florida State, Miller, a kid from Spain, received travel and essentially went to this training camp in the United States, and got a flight. And I guess he got, maybe some travel paid for in the United States, maybe accommodation, something like that. And did this camp or whatever, and then went back to Spain. He paid it back as soon as he found out it was against the rules. As soon as he and his family found out it was against the rules. And all of this is, again, according to Florida State, at least in terms of the timeline. I'm not going to sit here and say that I know for a fact on any of this, but according to Florida State, in terms of the timeline, this is before Florida State recruited him. There is, as far as I can see, no real impermissible recruiting violation here.
Right.
I guess it's a benefit insofar as a kid got to travel the country to go to a basketball camp, or got to travel the world to go to a basketball camp. But it's such a victimless benefit, I guess. It's a thing where this kid was just trying to get better, and it seems completely disproportionate with the quote unquote crime here. It's just so egregiously ridiculous. Jeff Goodman reported that it was $3,000 and the family paid it back immediately. This is a $3,000 thing for a kid from Spain whose family probably had no fucking idea what the NCAA rules were at the time. As soon as they figured it out, immediately paid it back. And you're going to suspend this kid for half of a season. This is why people think that this organization is a fucking clown show. these kind of decisions where it's not like the school, because again, according to Florida State, this is before the school was recruiting him. It's not like the school is getting like some recruiting benefit and you need to punish the school. The kid went to a basketball camp. The kid went to a basketball camp. And you're going to punish him 16 games for $3,000? It's a ridiculous, ridiculous punishment that makes no sense to me. This is the kind of shit that the NCAA needs to curtail. Punishing kids for things that just, it's not like he hurt anybody.
No.
Like this doesn't hurt anybody here. It's not like he got like $30,000 in order to go to Florida State. It's fucking $3,000 to go to a basketball camp. What are we doing here?
Yeah. I got a lot of thoughts on this entire thing, and I don't know how to eloquently say them because I get so infuriated when I see decisions like this come down from the NCAA. They talk so much about this idea of amateurism and the value of education that comes with being a college athlete. Who is supposed to educate these kids before they are college athletes as to what is permissible, what is not permissible? I don't have a great answer to that question. And I find it utterly ridiculous that we punish kids who don't have the adults around them or the systems in place to properly educate them and tell them what they should and should not do, that we end up punishing the kid for that. With a severe, and for somebody who is potentially a first round and higher pick, really impactful type of suspension for him. This whole idea of amateurism, it's so self-serving for the NCAA. When they have something to gain from labeling it as education and making sure that it's within the best interest of preserving their youth in some regard, then amateurism is of concern, number one. But when it comes time for punishment and slapping somebody on the wrist for something, they are not treated like an amateur or a minor or somebody else who should have had adults around them to handle a lot of this and take the brunt of the consequences. It's sickening to me that the NCAA does this time and time again. From all that I can tell, Florida State has not done anything wrong, has abided by the way they should report and go through this entire process and handled it. And they are ones that also miss out as a result of this. How many times do we see instances where justice isn't properly served? We end up punishing those who self-report, who handle things the right way, who are honest and forthcoming, and who have, as you said, victimless sort of crimes and breaking of the rules. While we also see instances of players who are accused of much worse, programs, coaches, institutions that end up having some sort of systemic cheating. And it takes years to come down with any type of punishment. And it is less severe on the adults involved in those circumstances than it is on the kids. It's punitive and wrong, and it makes me sick to my stomach. He broke a rule by the letter of the law. Suspend him for 2 ACC games and make him attend a quick 30-minute rules thing.
Yeah.
That's it. Done. Move on from it. No harm, no foul. Now you're not pushing other kids to try to go in different directions. There is a vast discrepancy developing because of the NIL legislation on how domestic basketball recruits and international basketball recruits are handled.
Yeah.
And the only message that I'm getting from any of this is that if you are a really talented overseas player with a desire to come and play professionally in the United States, go play in the NBL in Australia, go sign with the G League Ignite, maybe do the overtime elite experience. Because the NCAA, if you are not properly educated from 14 years old and beyond by the people around you to make sure that you are squeaky clean to avoid any of these rule allegations, the NCAA is going to try to fuck you. I'm sick to my stomach for Baba Miller. I'm infuriated that in 2022, after years of trying to deal with this stuff, the NCAA doesn't get it down. It pisses me off. And part of the reason for that is because I love Baba Miller. He's an infectious personality, a really, really fun player to watch, and somebody that I think should be a first-round pick this upcoming year. And the NCAA just, what are we doing, man? What are we doing here?
Yeah. It's one of those egregious decisions where I just can't fathom it, really, based off the information we have. But we shall see. We will see Baba Miller in January at some point. Okay, let's go on. We're gonna do bold predictions for the 2023 NBA draft. We're gonna do 3 each, and then we're gonna jump in to Tank Watch in terms of the teams stock up, stock down across the board with tanking this year in the NBA. Our 3 bold predictions. Adam, I will give you the floor. We'll go back and forth on each one. Give me your first bold prediction for the 2023 NBA draft.
Yeah, so fast forwarding here about 7 or 8 months as we get closer to the start of this college basketball season and what many people consider to be the official kickoff of the depth of the draft cycle. I am looking at the landscape of things right now. I happen to pretty much like this freshman class. I also don't see a ton of returners that pique my interest as high-level draft picks. So my first and biggest bold prediction of this is going to be that 0 upperclassmen end up getting taken in the top 20 of this year's draft. And upperclassmen being juniors and seniors, that there's not going to be that elder statesman role player type of guy who tends to squeak his way in. And I may even go further and say that, there may not be a sophomore that enters that group. Like Terquavion Smith is the one guy I have kind of circled right now as being able to be the exception to that. But I believe that there is more depth to this freshman class than maybe some other people out there might. And I'm just not seeing anybody from an upperclassman standpoint who jumps out to me and is that NBA caliber player. Maybe there is a Jalen Williams from Santa Clara that ends up jumping into this class and really moving all the way up. But my bold prediction right now is that this is a full-on youth movement at this point in the draft.
Okay, so I'm running through drafts of previous years. In 2022 and 2021, we had 2 upperclassmen taken in the lottery. In 2022, it was Jalen Williams and Ochai Agbaji. 2021, it was Chris Duarte and Davion Mitchell. In 2020, though, we didn't have any upperclassmen that went. The first upperclassman that went was Peyton Pritchard at 26th overall. In 2019, we had Rui Hachimura, Cam Johnson go in the lottery. In 2018, we had, let's see here, we had Mikal Bridges go in the lottery. We had Jerome Robinson go in the lottery. So typically the number of lottery picks is right around 2 upperclassmen over the last 5 years. There is an example, though, as I mentioned, in that 2020 class where this has happened before. And look, I think I do tend to agree with you that it's hard to find the upperclassmen this year. Chris Murray will be an upperclassman. Yep. He will be a junior. That's one name that you could see maybe that happening with. Colby Jones is another one that I like, but I have some questions, especially after hearing a report that Xavier just got annihilated in its first secret scrimmage. Marcus Sasser, maybe. Jaime Jaquez, maybe. Caleb Love is a guy that scouts love the talent at the very least. Just decision-making is the question for him. But it's hard to find them. It's hard to find the guy who it could be. I'd be surprised if any of the upper class bigs went, if only because, God, when was the last time we saw an upper class big man go in the top 20?
Yeah, it doesn't happen.
It just doesn't really happen anymore. That's 100% right, Spins. I mean, I am genuinely now trying to go back and find it. DJ Wilson, I think, might be the last one.
Oh, Wow. Shout out DJ Wilson. Yeah.
Like in 2017.
Mm.
I'm really really trying to find any of them realistically. Like Torian Prince was a big. Denzel Valentine wasn't a big. Denzel Valentine was a wing. DeAndre Bembry was. It's hard.
Yeah, I mean, as we're talking about like other guys and upperclassmen that we like, I think there are a lot of point guards and smaller guards out there who would be the best bets in guys. But even top 20, those don't seem like high value returns for me, the way that the league is trending and drafting has gone the last few years. Like, I think we're going to see a lot of younger wings and toolsy athletes and players. And if there's one kind of trend we've seen the last couple of years of, maybe Patrick Baldwin Jr., Peyton Watson, it's way too soon to know on those guys. But even if there's a predicted one and done freshman who doesn't live up to the hype playing college basketball, that's still worth a mid to late first round pick investment wise. So I'm preparing this to be a really strong youth movement at the top of the 2023 NBA draft.
Yeah, I agree with you. This is bold, if only because typically there are two that go in the lottery every year.
Right.
But I don't know that I disagree.
All right.
And in that vein, you mentioned that you're a little bit higher on this freshman class than I am, right? So my first bold prediction isn't really something that can be quantified, I guess. But mine is that at the end of the day, as evaluators, as an NBA draft community, as teams that are going through this process, we end up having more questions about the depth of this draft class than what we end up thinking we're going to have right now, based off of the enthusiasm that we all have about the guys at the top, right? We have Vic, we have Scoot, we have Amon, we have Nick Smith and Cam Whitmore, who we're all really excited about. Like, we have some dudes that we're pumped to see this year. I'm a little bit more questionable right now than you are on the depth of this freshman class, not in terms of their long-term upside, but in terms of their readiness to enter the draft process this year. Like, I really like a lot of the guys that are ranked lower in this class. Like, you and I have talked about Judah Mintz a little bit on this show.
Love Judah. Yeah.
We've talked about Terrence Arsenault as another guy that we like. We've talked about quite a few players below that. Like I've talked about another guy that I'm going to bring up in a bold prediction later on. I just have some questions about if those guys are going to get the minutes, if those guys are going to be ready to bounce day one in this draft. And on top of it, I keep saying this every year and guys keep improving and getting better, but like, at some point the bottom is going to fall out in terms of players having been picked over by the NBA a little bit throughout this shifting paradigm of the NBA, and its pre-draft process, being able to test the waters, being able to make NIL money or not make NIL money. Kind of, it feels like the wings and guards particularly have been fairly picked over in a real way. And it's going to leave a lot of big depth in this class. I think that a lot of guys like Drew Timme, Armando Bacot, Ryan Kalkbrenner, Colin Castleton, Oscar Tshiebwe obviously is another one. There are all these really interesting bigs that very well could end up being NBA players in a depth role. And like, is that the depth of this class? If it is, I don't think scouts are going to be all that enthused about it, given the way that scouts have proven over the last 3 or 4 years of the NBA draft to value the big position in the NBA.
Yeah, I strongly agree with that. I think I'd add point guards into that conversation too. That the smaller, like under 6'3" point guard position is one that's really going away in the NBA. And I
Yeah.
think that there's a lot of depth and high level production at that point in college basketball right now, because you win games with either takeover guards who are really good at creating for everybody else and being point of attack defenders, or big men you can throw the ball to on the block to score 1-on-1. So the producers in college basketball right now don't necessarily translate to high intrigue draftability. So I think your instincts on the questions about the back end of this draft are really strong. Like for me, it's just going to be more so, where does that line get drawn between feeling safe with a certain amount of guys, then I'm intrigued enough to want to take a flyer on them early, and then we get to that really depth group, right? Like, are we talking about 25 to 30 guys that are legitimate first round prospects and type of draft picks that we would feel comfortable with, 10 or 12 flyers, and now this is just an issue for the back 15 picks of the draft in the later part of the second round? Or are we having a ton of questions even into the top 20 and can't find 10 more guys to fill out that first round? And now we're talking about really reaching for some guys in the later part of the first round and not knowing if there's going to be depth in the second. So that remains to be seen. But I think your point on positions is incredibly, incredibly important.
Yeah, like I just kind of look at it and I'm like, I think it's somewhere in the middle of the latter point you made, where I do wonder how many first round grades I'm going to have in this class. I do wonder, typically I have right in the ballpark of 45 to 48, like guaranteed contract grades, because that tends to be pretty close to the number in terms of guys that get guaranteed contracts. How many of those am I going to have this year? I'm not totally sure, to be honest. It's going to be really, really interesting to see where this class falls, because right now, like for instance, like someone like Bobo Miller, who you're a big fan of, and I really like the talent level of, like, is he going to be ready to go? I'm not 100% sure. Is Terrence Arsenault going to be ready to go? Is, even someone that's like a Maxwell Lewis at Pepperdine, like, is that guy going to be ready to go? I don't know. I'm not totally sure. Like, I really like Trey Alexander. Is Trey Alexander going to be ready to go? We'll see. It creates an interesting paradigm, though. Okay. Point number 2. What is your second bold prediction, Spence?
All right. So my second bold prediction is that there's actually going to be one college program that produces 4 first-round draft picks this year. And that is the Duke Blue Devils, with Dariq Whitehead, Derek Lively, Tyrese Proctor, and even Kyle Filipowski filling that one out. I'll deal with Filipowski kind of at the very end there, but I believe Whitehead is a lottery, top half of the lottery type of guy. I've got a borderline top 5, maybe top 7 grade on him coming into the season. Love his explosiveness, his scoring ability. I think he's an underrated passer on the move in a lot of different ways, and just think that his game is tailor-built for the NBA. We've talked about Derek Lively before. We went in depth on him on the Bigs episode here. A really solid, dependable player on the defensive end of the floor, has a chance to be very, very good there. The modernity of his offensive game and how consistently he is able to switch on the perimeter is really going to dictate how high his ceiling is in terms of draft position and what NBA teams see in him. I would give those 2 guys very low of a chance to not be first round, if at all, lottery guys. This upcoming year. That's
I would be surprised if either of those don't go in the first round.
Yeah, it would be very, very surprising. Tyrese Proctor looks awesome. And this is a continuation of something that we saw over the summer, which is development of his jump shot. He's a big playmaking guard with elite feel to be a good connector piece. But as long as he's knocking down jumpers and can play off ball, he's going to have really good fit in the NBA in any type of system. Rapidly climbing on draft boards in that regard, but early returns out of Duke seem to be pretty strong about the role he's going to play this year and just how ready and mature his game really looks. I'm a big Tyrese Proctor guy, and I think you are as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, look, I've always really liked Tyrese. I had some questions entering this, preseason, I guess, about how he was going to score the basketball. Uh, I still have some questions about like how he's going to score the basketball at Duke, but everything I've heard from scouts, I haven't watched Duke at all yet in the preseason. But everything I've heard from scouts is that he looks like a first round pick. Defensively, the passing ability is a big guard that's like 6'4", 6'5". The shooting looks better, especially off the catch, apparently. So yeah, no, I'm in on I am in on Tyrese Proctor for sure. The fourth one is where I think you're gonna have to sell me a little bit.
Yeah, and that's what I was waiting on.
I was there when we did our bigs thing, but I'm a little bit more questionable now, I guess I would say.
So the sales pitch to me isn't necessarily about what Filipowski's role is going to be this year at Duke, or how he plays and performs. I'm not predicting this massive breakout and ability for him to shoot 40% from three and be their best player on the floor in any of that. It's kind of twofold. One is, as we talked about, the depth at the end of the class. I don't see at this juncture in time a ton of other wings or high-level athletes with 7 feet wingspans to sneak into that first round to say, okay, that's a clear top 30 guy, where I would dock Filipowski from a spot that I've kind of had him for a while. The second part of this is that if you are an NBA team trying to win games in the playoffs, I think it's really important to have a stretch shooting big man somewhere on your roster, a break glass in case of emergency type of threat that you can throw in there to play either the 4 or the 5. And as we look at the end of the first round, typically the teams that are drafting there are the ones that are trying to compete for championships earlier on in their career. I think Filipowski is going to have a lot of issues on the defensive end of the floor early on in his NBA career. That may prevent him from playing a role early on. But if you're trying to find that right guy to come in and just be a missing piece on your roster that you don't necessarily have, you've got defensive infrastructure at a championship caliber level, I think Filipowski makes sense as a plug and play, bigger floor spacer offensive weapon early on in his career, to a point that a high level organization can stomach.
So we're going to find out on, I believe it's Wednesday, if Kyle Filipowski is going to start with Derek Lively, because the two big combination is a question for Duke, right? Do you play both Filipowski and Lively together? I think we're in agreement that Derek Lively is a starter. Like it'd be Filipowski that would be getting the questionable decision here. I've heard really good things about Mark Mitchell for them in the preseason.
Yep.
That I've heard he looks like, maybe not like an NBA player, especially off the jump, but I've heard he looks really good. His defensive versatility has been very valuable. I've heard some good things about their vets as well, like Ryan Young, the transfer from Northwestern. And I've heard, a couple of good, like, I wonder if they're going to be like Jeremy Roach. Like I've heard, they're going to be pretty deep, or at least like deeper than maybe what people are expecting. And, we'll see what happens with Filipowski. I wonder if the situation is right for him to end up as a first round one and done, I guess, as much as anything. 'Cause I love the talent level offensively. I just don't know if it's going to make a lot of sense in terms of his ability to put up the numbers and to showcase the lack of flaws that NBA scouts will want to see. Maybe.
Well, and I think that's where I'm excited to see how he and Derek Lively play together, because if he can coexist on a court, with a pretty good rim protector and a guy who's going to be a solid defensive big at that level, then maybe there's hope for him to play more of that 4 position in the NBA. I think we're starting to see with teams like Cleveland, even the way the Milwaukee Bucks have played the last couple of years with a truer 4-man in there when they play Portis and Lopez together. Like, we're moving back towards size, not necessarily a lack of skill at those positions. You need perimeter shot making. You need guys who are uniquely talented on the offensive end to make it work. But more size is something the teams can get away with now. So we'll see how it all plays out. But that's one gamble preseason right now I'm willing to make. Duke, 4 first-round picks. Kyle Filipowski does enough to keep himself in that conversation for a late first-round pick.
Okay. I'm not opposed to it. I like the talent level enough to where I'll be interested. Houston played Duke in a scrimmage, apparently, and I'm all in on Houston. They apparently, according to Jeff Goodman, beat Duke. But yeah, apparently Ryan Young and Mark Mitchell were the standouts for Duke, and Duke did not have Derek Lively and Derek Whitehead in that game.
Right.
But we'll see. We'll see what this looks like. Okay. My second bold prediction. We're going to move out of the NCAA and move into OTE.
Oh.
Ausar Thompson does not go in the lottery of the 2023 NBA draft.
Okay.
And it pains me to say that because I had the absolute best time talking to Ausar Thompson. When we broke down tape together with Amen and Ausar, I would love to talk to him again. These kids are super emotionally intelligent, mature, incredible athletes, really fun to watch play. I'm just worried about the shot with Ausar Thompson.
Yeah.
And I'm worried about the ability to play on the ball, like in a primary level. And I just wonder what this looks like in the NBA and if teams are convinced that he will shoot. Because based off the early returns, they've been overseas, they've played quite a bit. Based off the early returns in OTE, I believe I've seen their stats page has Ausar Thompson at 1 for 13 from 3 so far. I would imagine that does not count their European trip where all the box scores I saw, like 0 for 4, 1 for 4 from 3. He's got to figure it out. Like that's what it comes down to. He's really got to show growth this year with the jumper. They're great workers. Everyone that you talk to with OTE will say they really, really work at it. And I think he has a chance to turn it around. But I'm a little bit worried about the jumper with Ausar. And if he doesn't hit jumpers, I do wonder if he could be passed up within the 2023 draft lottery.
Yeah, not as bold of a prediction as I think many people would make it out to be. I kind of err on the side of agreeing with you in some regard. I think the bold part about it is thinking that there are going to be 14 other guys who clearly leapfrog him in terms of upside that don't have either similar type of flaws. That's where I think in that like 10 to whatever range we want to talk about right now, I don't know if I would feel confident picking 4 guys who have higher ceilings and just show enough impact on the court to go above Ausar at this point. But he's definitely top half of the lottery.
I could find 4, I think, for sure. But I get what you're saying. Like if it all comes together, there's a lot of tools there. They're both really good defensively. I think Amen's a little bit better defensively. I don't know. I hate doing this one. Like I almost didn't. I was just struggling to find one because I think that so much is up in the air once you get past the top guys, but there's nothing you can really say that's bold about like Vic or Scoot or Amen, unless you want to say like Amen is going to end up going ahead of Scoot, which if you want to make a case for that, I'm willing to listen, to be honest. I don't agree, but I'd be willing to listen to a case for it. I really, really like Ausar, and I just worry a little bit about where this is headed.
Yep. Yeah. And look, we're early enough in this draft cycle and college basketball games haven't started yet, at least available to the public, to the point where if we're going to go off of anything we've seen thus far, it's OTE or international guys. And we just haven't seen the strides that we know he needs to make. And we've known coming into the season to feel comfortable with him having a tight grip on being a lottery pick. So I get it.
Yeah. Okay. You are up. Number 3 for you, Adam Spinella.
Yeah, I am up here. I'm going to stick around that lottery type of discussion. And as opposed to talking about somebody who is kind of dropping a little bit in that regard, I'm going to go with a riser over the summer, somebody who I've heard tremendous things about throughout the fall, camp workouts, everything. that you can pay attention to at this point. Brandon Miller from Alabama ends up being a top 7 pick in this year's draft.
Ooh, top half of the lottery. I had him at 8 on the mock. I don't hate it.
So let me look right now at kind of the rest of the top of this draft class. There's obviously Victor Wembanyama, Scoot Henderson, and Ausar Thompson, who people talk about as being in some form. I don't know if there's much debate to the order, but a big 3, the 3 biggest prizes that might be available at the top. Cam Whitmore, Nick Smith, 4 and 5 guys that we see conveniently talked about and consistently in those areas due to Smith's scoring ability and Cam Whitmore's freakish athleticism. And I got to witness that firsthand and call far too many timeouts after he beat us in transition. But that's a good top 5. Dariq Whitehead, Keontae George, Brandon Miller. Those are the 3 guys that I'm kind of circling right now to be either within grasp of getting into the top 5 or at least in that top 7 or 8. And there's something about not just what I'm hearing from people around the Alabama program, but looking at the interviews of the actual players on the team who are talking about him and describe him as something really different and special with the way that he just scores and competes. I hear good things about his defense, which is not something I was anticipating coming into the season. I'm ready to buy in on a 6'8", 6'9" scoring wing forward who everybody seems to indicate is going to have a magical season this year in, by my mark, the toughest conference in college basketball to be in as a recruit in the SEC.
Yeah. Everything I've heard is just so glowing with Brandon Miller that it's hard not to buy into this being right. Yep. He has the size. He has like the perimeter skills. There's a lot here. There's a lot here with Brandon Miller. And this is a guy that I didn't really like as a recruit, to be honest. Like I thought he's a little overrated the first couple times I saw him, because there's a lot of like heavy mid-range gunning, a lot of like not super high level defensive engagement, it felt like. But shit, man. I mean, I'm willing to chalk this one up as a loss before he's played a game in the NCAA.
Well, I always liked his skill level, but the question for me was like, is he ever going to fit as a role player if he isn't this mid-range heavy threat in the NBA? Because that's so hard to be. You've got to be super, super special to be somebody that commands an offense and is very isolation heavy, playing around the elbows all the time. That's reserved for the best of the best at the next level. And my worry was, is his three-point shot going to be good enough? Is his defense going to be good enough to be able to play off-ball, share reps with other guys? We may be at the point where it doesn't matter, because if everything we're hearing about him is that he's this special on the offensive end of the floor, give him the ball and let him go. I'm setting the bar pretty high for preseason expectations here. Top 7 for Brandon Miller.
I love it. Okay. Last one for me. Jalen Hood-Schifino, a guy we've talked about a bit on this show already. Jalen Hood-Schifino becomes a one and done first round pick this year.
Yes, Sam. Let's go.
This one's all going to come down to the shot, I feel like. If he can shoot it from distance, I feel very good about this one, because he is just kind of an all-around wing in a way that teams really desperately look for right now. He's strong. He's a good defender. He makes the right passing read regularly. He can put the ball on the deck in a straight line. He makes decisions on the move. Like, he's just a smart guy who really, really helps across the board. He's a Pittsburgh guy as well. Like, let's just be real about that. Shout out Jalen Hood-Schifino. Yeah, we're all about it. But more, it's going to come down to the shot. And I've heard enough now in terms of the way he's looked in preseason, where I feel pretty good about the fact that he is going to be a very, very high level player. And I'll go a step further on this one. I think that Trace Jackson Davis, some of the older vets like Race Thompson, Xavier Johnson, they lead Indiana to a Big Ten title this year.
Let's go.
And Indiana will be back under Mike Woodson.
Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. I like it a lot. And I like Hood-Schifino. I have from the time I really watched him play in high school, just kind of a stud. You mentioned the physicality. When you're strong, that's one thing. But when you use your strength consistently in the way that you play, that's a whole different ballgame. And that's where at such a young age, he's already poised with hostage dribbles, with knowing how to use his shoulder to create contact, being able to just have that unteachable, like figure it out mid-air, how to change your angle and be able to just lay it in off the glass. Like he is a jump shot away from being a really, really high level prospect. And I think of him more as like a lead guard than a wing because of the passing ability. I think he's somebody I'd want to have with the ball in his hands a decent amount. I'm with you, Sam. We're kind of vibing here tonight. A lot of these predictions you're making are making a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I'm here for it. This is what I'm here for. I like the agreements.
Yeah.
I like the agreements, Spins. Jalen Hood-Schifino in Indiana's first exhibition against Marion earlier this weekend. 11 points in 24 minutes, 4 assists, only 2 turnovers. Went 0 of 2 from 3, but 5 of 8 from the field. So a good, solid opening game for Jalen Hood-Schifino. Yeah, I'm a believer. He started in this game. He played more minutes than anyone in this game, it looks like. No Trace Jackson-Davis in this game, so they started Malik Reneau, who I'd imagine is probably going to come off the bench, but Reneau had a killer game looking at the box score, 14 points and 11 rebounds. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to see where this goes.
The Hoosiers will be very good this year. You know, they finally have a top-end creator in that backcourt position. That's been something that's eluded them the last couple of years. Figured out how to lock down the paint with Trace Jackson-Davis and Ausar Thompson. Race is one of the more underrated glue guys in America. And, like, to me, like a sneaky undrafted free agent type of guy that I'd be looking at.
Good defensively. That's the thing.
He's so good. And he's athletic. I think his offensive game has been a little bit stunted just in kind of the way that they play, trying to feed Jackson-Davis down on the block as much as they do. And they've got role players and glue guys. You know, there's shooters here in Miller Kopp. There's defensive-minded guards who really compete and get after it, like Trey Galloway. There's an athletic, toolsy guy in Jordan Geronimo who can do some things on the offensive glass and just be a dose of energy when you need it off the bench. Like, I really like all of the pieces that Mike Woodson has to be able to push here. But at the end of the day, you're going to go as far as your best players take you. And that's where I think having the experience of Trace Jackson-Davis and the just all-around craft of Jalen Hood-Schifino can really help the Hoosiers year long.
Yeah. Okay. That's all we got for bold predictions. Now it's Tank Watch time, baby. Let's go. Tank Watch. This is our weekly segment where Spins and I dive deep into how NBA teams purportedly at the bottom of the league are playing. Tank Watch stock updates go as follows. Stock up means that the team is worse. Stock down means that the team is playing well. And I got to start with the stock down because I'm excited to talk about this team. We saved them off of the vibe check that we did when we released the podcast on Sunday night, Monday morning. The Utah Jazz stock down in the Tank Watch rankings, baby. They look very competent. They look like they're having fun out there. Like they're actually just an enjoyable team to watch. Will Hardy has this team like very connected, very together. It's really, really just an enjoyable watch offensively. They play well-spaced basketball. They're very together defensively, rotationally. Just a really, really sharp team. You can see immediately why Danny Ainge like prioritized Will Hardy just because their togetherness and their cohesion just immediately. It's like watching the opposite of the Los Angeles Lakers on offense. Like they have a plan every time down the court. They run things. They defensively have very good rotational awareness. It's really, really impressive. Really, really, really impressive what Will Hardy's been able to do with this team.
Yeah, and it's a group of veterans who all have that chip on their shoulder of like, why are you overlooking us? Why is everybody trying to push us all the way to the bottom? We're just going to come out of the gate swinging and show you. And that's where they're connected on the defensive end of the floor, because when you have veterans out there, you tend to be a little bit more polished rotationally in the way that you play. They're still not experts at the point of attack, but they have enough rotational coverage to be able to cover up for a lot of that. Offensively, though, I mean, you said spacing. That's the key for me. They keep the roles really, really simple on the offensive end of the floor, and they know how to space things out. Jared Vanderbilt's just a fun player.
Yeah.
Lauri Markkanen is not quite an all-star necessarily, but he's playing as a high level contributor. Let's not forget. He's a 7-footer who's drilling shots from three, is able to take guys off the bounce, hit tough turnarounds. Like that in itself is so rare, and it doesn't get talked about enough. He's turned into a really good offensive piece for this team now that he's not just a primary floor spacer standing out there and living off of what other people create for him.
I think he's one where I wonder if Eurobasket this summer like really just gave him a shit ton of confidence coming into the season.
Yep.
Because he's doing the exact same thing he did for Finland at Eurobasket. He is creating off the bounce, creating in the mid post, putting the ball on the deck, attacking. He looks like he thinks every single shot is going in. Every single time he takes it. He's just playing such confident, aggressive basketball right now. Yep. He's been terrific. He's been he's one that I'm going to talk about on the next show with Schindler, because we're going to do a little thing about some of like the more fun breakout players we've seen so far. Lauri has been regarded as like a starting quality player in the league for a while, but it's clear he's taken a leap in terms of his shot creation ability. He's shooting over the top of guys. He's making contested shots at a high level. He's just been really good. Just been really, really good.
Man, you must have just read the piece I published for SB Nation over the weekend on Lauri, because that was exactly the point about Finland and Eurobasket being like such a shot in the arm for him and showing what he can do as a number one option. Like this is less of a surprise if you're paying attention to how he played over the summer. And by the way, quick shout out to Jordan Clarkson, the facilitator. Like he has turned down the unabashed gunner role and really blossomed into somebody that's table setting and taking advantage of the simple reads that come from a well-spaced offensive end of the floor. Like this is a really fun team. Like Kelly Olynyk, you mentioned, he looks really good now that, again, he's getting consistent minutes. The role for him is a little bit more clarified. They're fun. They're a really fun watch, and I think a lot of that comes from that chip on their shoulder, prove everybody wrong mentality. But definitely stock down in terms of the tank here, because they are winning enough games to take themselves kind of out of that early season part of the conversation.
Yeah. No, I've really enjoyed the Jazz. They, I hope that we get to see them continue moving forward. I didn't think this team was going to be very good. The best thing for the organization, you can make a case, is to move some of these guys now that they've enhanced their value, but I don't really want to see that. Like I've just enjoyed Colin Sexton. I've enjoyed Lauri. I've enjoyed the Lauri like Olynyk combination with Jared Vanderbilt. Like they're just a fun team. They're a really, really fun group of guys to watch play right now. They're doing the nobody believed in us vibe really well right now. Vibes for them, on to talk about the last episode, like a 4. The vibes are strong in Utah right now. Yeah. Okay. Stock down or stock up. Sorry. Yeah, we're gonna have to remember this. I'm sick, guys. Stock up. The Houston Rockets.
Yeah.
This team is just very young. They're just very, very young. You put Houston on the list as the stock up team. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, look, when you don't have an adult presence in the room, in the locker room, on court, like, is there anybody who plays in Houston that's able to buy a beer? Like, I don't know, but when you have that many young guys around, you're obviously going to take your licks on the defensive end of the floor. But this is showing right now. We talked about this in the last episode with Detroit and the importance of some rebuilding teams of having a veteran voice and somebody who can stabilize your presence both on court and in the locker room being really important. because when the young guys don't necessarily know everything that they're expected to be doing, they're taking their lumps, you want to make sure they don't go at each other, that they stay cohesive in a lot of regards. And we saw a little bit of a spat last week, which, again, in the grand scheme of things, not a huge deal, of Jalen Green, Jabari Smith, just trying to figure some stuff out. Probably defensive coverage breakdown somewhere that they're talking about. But man, wouldn't it be nice to have another veteran and presence that's been around the block to be able to tamper that down a little bit. I just think that this is a team on the defensive end of the floor that is not going to be able to generate enough stops to win basketball games, even when their talent level is continuing to be improved. I like a lot of the individuals that they have, but the fit is only going to matter if they can figure out how to construct a lineup that makes sense defensively with all of the guys that they've brought in. And, if we're talking about segments here, Sam, I want to at least propose one small thing that every once in a while we kind of do. And Eric Bledsoe, I don't want to be here, veteran player of the week on some of these tanking teams. And to me, that's Eric Gordon right now. This is no disrespect to Eric Gordon, because being the only adult presence on a team of youngsters can be pretty infuriating at times. But I feel bad for the guy, because it shouldn't be his job to babysit and fix all of these little issues. I think it's pretty clear that's not what should be expected of him for the Houston Rockets. But he kind of had that face on the bench while that entire spat was going on. Oh, this is going to be a long year. So stock up tank wise for the Rockets.
Yeah. The Rockets right now, in their genuine rotation, so not counting Boban, they have 3 guys 26 or older. Garrison Matthews is 26. He just turned 26. Jayshawn Tate just turned 27. And then it's Eric Gordon at 34. Eric Gordon is genuinely the only adult here. Not to say that Jayshawn and Garrison Matthews aren't, mature human beings. It's more that there's probably a real generational gap here in terms of Eric Gordon not having a lot of guys to hang out with and not having a lot of fun here. Jayshawn has just gotten back as well. He's played their last couple of games. And before that, Eric was the only one, really, because Garrison's playing 10 minutes a night. So I get it. If I'm Eric Gordon, I get it, man. Here's the thing. Look, I don't know how this is going with Eric. Maybe he's the best guy to have around for the older guys, or the younger guys, and is terrific. But not everyone wants to be a mentor. Some guys want to go and win, right? I wouldn't blame him if he was thinking that. You know what I mean? We'll see where it goes for Eric Gordon. I hope he gets traded. I think he still has one good, useful playoff run in him.
Yeah.
And I do genuinely hope he gets a shot to do that. On the last show, I kind of brought up my weirdo Lakers idea, but find him, honestly, find me a team that Eric Gordon, with his ability to defend bigger guys, guard play, ability to bully guys and get to the rim, ability to shoot consistently, find me a team he wouldn't help, right? Yeah. Can you imagine him on Portland? Can you imagine him on Phoenix? For the love of God, Phoenix should have went and got him last year. Can you imagine him on Memphis? There's so many teams that he would legitimately really, really, really help, I think, by his presence. So yeah, I'm rooting for an Eric Gordon move at some point.
Well, and he was a freshman in high school when his starting backcourt was born. So it's just, feel for the guy.
Yeah. Okay. That's all I've got, Spins. What do you got? Tell the people where they can find your work. Tell the people what you've got coming.
Yeah. More pieces coming at SB Nation, still getting through our season previews over at the Box and One for college basketball, as well as starting to detail kind of not just the top teams in the country, but the top recruits entering the college basketball season and players that we're looking at for the NBA draft. Find me at the Box and One _ on Twitter, Adam Spinella on YouTube, or my Substack page to get a bunch of direct to your inbox NBA draft and college basketball, as well as some NBA content. But highlight of my week here with you, Sam.
I'm assuming that you haven't watched any movies, right?
Oh, no, I have not watched a movie.
It's basketball season, right?
It's basketball.
So, yeah, I've watched a couple. One of them is Barbarian, and we're going to talk about Barbarian with Mark Schindler on the next episode because I know Mark watched it as well. Wild fucking ride. What else have I seen? Oh, Laura and I have been catching up on TV. So we caught up on Abbott Elementary. Have you watched Abbott Elementary yet, Spence?
Yeah, I haven't. I've heard good things. I'm much more of a TV show guy than a movie guy. And I've heard I need to watch Abbott Elementary because I teach. But
it's so
fun.
I
haven't yet. Yeah.
It's so sweet. It's so nice. It's just like the best palate cleanser TV show that you will find. And then Laura and I finished obviously House of the Dragon is now done. We're done with that. We finished Rings of Power late last week as well. But yeah, it's I don't know if I want to dive too deep into those. I think Schindler has watched both of those, so maybe we'll talk about it on the Thursday pod with Schindler. But that's all I've got here. I'm not sure what I will have out by the time this episode goes up. Shout out to Spins for being willing to record for 2 hours with me on Sunday because again, I think there's pretty real chance that I'm just like not going to be real functional on Monday or Tuesday. I'm not feeling super hot. So thanks to Spins. Thank you all for listening. Please remember, rate, review, subscribe to Everything Can Sports Show. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Game Theory Podcast with Sam Vecini. That's all I've got. Until next time,